Hello! Today is September 22nd, 2020, and today we're doing government and social. I almost forgot, and we just talked about it.
There's a lot of twos in today's date.
We're filming on a Friday, so it's weird. Everything feels like it's Bizarro World.
We might start filming on every Friday.
And the thing that happened Friday at 11 p.m. that we didn't cover, please don't comment and be like, how could you leave this out? That was so important. We'll get it next week.
We're not psychics, yeah.
I think John Oliver dealt with that a lot better because his show is last week tonight for exactly the same reason.
So, let's get right into it. We got some interesting government news. Of course, leading up to the old election. Government news more important than ever. And some other things that are happening in this country, although they seem to be toning down a little bit, or maybe I'm just out of the loop again. Are the riots? Where are we having riots right now, Chris? You keep up with this.
There's still protests going on. Like, I know there are some still happening in Louisville, but I think Louisville has to pay a settlement to the family of Breonna Taylor.
Which is ridiculous, because it's taxpayer money.
Just fire the cops. Charge the cops.
No, take it out of their pension.
No. There's a way better solution you guys are overlooking. Imagine how much the organs of those cops are worth. What was it, $12 million?
Maybe we could trade them to China for some laptops
or
something.
We could easily, the kidneys alone are worth like $500,000, right?
I would think.
I don't know what the going rate is for organs right now, right?
These are probably healthy guys, physical fit, active. Yeah. That's the solution.
The level 1 modest proposal. It's not quite so modest.
And I'm not kidding at all. So the protests keep happening, but hopefully not as many burning buildings and cars lately. I think it has toned down a little bit, leading up to November 4th. But if you did burn a car and you're sitting at home and you got the smug grin on your face and you're like, I burned a car and I got away with it. Not so fast.
Not so fast. Apple gave the FBI access to the iCloud account of a protester accused of setting police cars on fire. What did they find? A picture of a Molotov cocktail recipe.
Video.
Green glass. Yeah, that's what I was building to. Yeah, and then it's like, oh no. Also, lots of communication records where the guy was getting other people involved. Like, yeah, we need to do something about this.
So,
I get that people are upset, but this is maybe not the best use of directing your energy.
But it is also terrifying because we remember Apple. It's weird because Apple drew a line in a child porn case. But when it came to burning police cars, they were like, no problem. Here it is. You want more of it?
I saw that argument in there, and I think that it's a little different. So I think that Apple gave iCloud access to all of the people in the shooter and everything. It was just they didn't want to decrypt whatever was actually on the phone because that was the line to cross.
Which also points out how stupid do you have to be to put your propaganda and criminal activity in the cloud?
Yeah.
Come on. That's someone who doesn't understand what the cloud is.
So I think if this guy had pictures of his Molotov cocktails on his phone, they would have been SOL. But that wasn't what the case was here.
Pro rider tip. Actually, don't take your phone. That's such a bad idea.
That's a real tip. Don't take your phone.
I know it's convenient.
This is one of those stories that's going to be like, there's an update to it that happens at like 5 p.m. on a Friday because Customs and Border Patrol is trying to save face.
I think it's the opposite because of the comments they made. I think this is like old salty bureaucrats who will not admit they were wrong no matter what. They'll let it go through the entire process.
See, this is a rare level 1 situation. I actually have a much darker view of this. Because Apple had been harassing Customs and Border Protection about counterfeit, quote unquote counterfeit batteries and repair parts, like Louis Rossman's videos where he's getting all the iPhone repair stuff. And that stuff was not actually fake Apple stuff in 99 out of 100 cases. It was literally stuff where he had mailed parts to be repaired that were repaired overseas and sent back. And so that's definitely a ship of Theseus problem. But Apple was complaining, saying, no, look, this Apple logo on this thing, we didn't send it. And it's like, well, isn't it possible that somebody sent that and then they sent it back repaired? So Apple's like, no. And so I think we're going to find there's going to be a smoking gun that hasn't come out yet, that Apple was leaning on Customs and Border Protection to do this, and they're more than happy to oblige.
Either way, that's pretty dark. But we're talking about it, and we haven't read the headline.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Customs and
right.
Border Protection seized a shipment of OnePlus Buds thinking they were counterfeit Apple AirPods. And so they tweeted pictures. They were like, look, we intercepted about $400,000 worth of fake products.
They
and they're not.
They are remarkably similar.
They're remarkably similar.
You have to say that.
I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be up to a court of law and not some Customs and Border Protection lackey.
Well, see, but that's what I'm talking about because so here's a real box. Here's the box that they seized. Looks pretty similar.
Wait, is it? No. Those are all OnePlus boxes. The Apple AirPods box is not red.
No,
Yeah,
that's what
they
I'm
don't
saying.
use
Like,
color.
this is what they
Very
considered.
much
And then there was like, oh, no, here's one we got from a store. It's the same thing.
But they're OnePlus Buds, not Apple. No, none of those pictures are AirPods.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So,
Krista,
OnePlus USA responded in this tweet and it said, "Hey, give those back," with an upside down smiley face.
what can you do? So, the quote here, it was something about, They basically said, unrelated to the images of language in a box, companies not have to put an Apple word mark or design on their product to violate these trademarks, blah, blah, blah. You can appeal. So basically they were like, we're not going to admit that we're just stupid and we pulled those boxes because we don't know the difference. You're going to have to go through the process.
I can't wait for Customs and Border Protection to start seizing all black rectangular phones. Like, this phone is basically entirely a screen. That's ripping off Apple's 2009 iPhone design. Seized.
You know, I think we can rest easy. Considering how inept these people are, we can be confident that we've never given them overwhelming power or anything like that. We haven't given them jurisdiction over, what is it, 2/3 of the country?
Yeah, there's that map where there's just like a tiny little area in rural Kansas. It's like, this is the area where you're not under border protection.
So, yeah. Yay. And poor OnePlus. But OnePlus, I think, could benefit from this because, first of all, it gets their name out there. And people look at this and they're like, wow, those are a lot like AirPods. I could get those for cheap and people would think I've got AirPods.
Those have a really cool feature that AirPods don't, which is the little touch thing. There's like a little touch pad on the side of the ear pod so you can, have some touch controls.
Nice.
So it looks like you're digging in your ear when you're just changing the phone.
Yeah, that's great.
Or a gnat lands on it and cranks it up to max volume. So yeah, the big, trade war stuff, the socio-political scene, geopolitics it's pretty hot. It's spicy right now. And here in the old US of A, especially now, we're not really manufacturing a lot of stuff. And that could be concerning considering, like everything gets built in a country that's probably going to be our enemy for pretty soon and for a long time. So what do we do? Well, there is one organization that has come up with a number of what it will take to bootstrap the old U.S. chip making.
The chip industry wants $50 billion to keep manufacturing in the U.S. That's what they think it's going to take in subsidies. There's a graph in here that's super disturbing that shows from the 1990s until now, the U.S.'s decline in microprocessor manufacturing. It's a little disturbing. I think $50 billion is probably a lowball number, all things considered, because
that doesn't build a lot of fabs.
No. I mean, look how much money. Well, I mean, like we've got the numbers for TSMC and how much money they spent on some of their foundry build-up just to get from 16 nanometer, 16 nanometer / 22 nanometer to 7 nanometer, and it was a staggering amount of money.
I don't think we can swing that payment because if we were going to do that, we would have to stop occupying like 5 countries. I don't know if we can do that. The federal government does try to replace any lost monies, though, and they do it in a lot of surprising and interesting. Well, that's the same thing. Terrible ways. That's what I'm getting at there. They're criminals. They steal from us. And one of the ways that is maybe the most disgusting is that they're like, okay, here's a set of laws. You must adhere to these, or we will take your freedom and or your possessions. And you're like, all right, give me a list of those laws. I'm like, sure, no problem. It's going to be 10 cents a page.
Bill to tear down federal court's paywall gains momentum in Congress. Federal courts charge 10 cents per page for many documents online. This hasn't really changed much from when it was paper documents and somebody said, hey, wait a minute, having a server on the internet is way cheaper than a vast system of mailing and distributing paper documents. Why are we charging 10 cents a page?
Now, it's weird how they're going to go about this because they didn't say, okay, this is something that's terrible. We can't do this to the people. We'll just give it to you because it basically costs us nothing. They're saying, all right, how are we going to make up this money? So they're going to make up the money. Now, one part I kind of like, there are organizations who collect all this data and then like use it to resell it in various ways. They're going to hit them with higher fines. I'm okay with that. You know, it's a business model. You pay for it. They're also raising the price it takes to file a lawsuit to help offset these costs. Although we do have frivolous lawsuit problems in this country.
I don't think it'll stop the people that are interested in frivolous lawsuits in the first place.
Not.
Yeah, not at all.
It's probably one of those things that just affects the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah, the poor people who may actually have legitimate grievances.
It's like my wealthy neighbor in the wealthy subdivision that backs up to my crappy trailer has taken 10 feet of my yard. What can I do? Nothing.
Or what if you had an employer that you knew was spying on your social media in order to fight unionization and you needed to file a lawsuit?
Oh, no.
Especially if you were a delivery driver who probably doesn't make a lot of money because this company is known to lowball a little bit.
Oh, look at that. Business Insider has just that story. 2 U.S. senators just demanded that Amazon stop spying on its workers via social media after news surfaced that the tech giant was monitoring drivers' plans to protest or strike. Not a good look for Amazon. Not a good look for Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, and
He doesn't care.
they have some really good evidence that this was happening. There is a quote in here somewhere. Let me see if I can find it. Their response to this was just like, it's one of those responses. I
am the law.
Here we go. It's really long, but it's really long and it says nothing.
We have a variety of ways to gather driver feedback, and we have teams who work every day to ensure we're advocating to improve the driver experience, particularly through hearing from drivers directly. Upon being notified, we discovered that one group within our delivery team was aggregating information from closed groups. Now, while they were trying to support the drivers, that approach doesn't meet our standards, and they are no longer doing this, and we have other ways for drivers to give us their feedback.
So, spying on your private social media and trolling around and trying to find any unionization talk was supporting the drivers and seeking their feedback.
You know what would be a good way to support the drivers? Cut each and every one of them $100,000 check, which if Jeff Bezos did personally did that for every single Amazon employee that they have right now, he would be as wealthy as he was before the pandemic started. Pandemic.
You can say pandemic. I don't think YouTube will strike that. But thank goodness these senators wrote a strongly worded letter.
I mean, think about how crazy that is. Like how much more wealthy he is now than before this whole thing started. That you could just give every employee $100,000.
So yeah, pro Amazon driver tip: don't do your unionization talk on social media because they're not going to stop. They say they're going to stop. They're not going to stop.
If they're doing that, you know, they're probably into the Alexa as well. It's like,
you go first.
No, it's just like, how crazy is it that Alexa is, you know, it's like, Alexa doesn't think you should unionize. What was that?
Well, I'm just so glad the senators wrote that letter, you know. Maybe they'll write another one and then, you know, something really will get done.
Wasn't that one of the plots of one of like the really good Hitchcock movies was, the antagonist was it was Vincent Price. It was one of the old Vincent Price movies where he was trying to convince somebody that they were seeing a skeleton walking around and blah 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 because they wanted them to commit suicide. It's like we need a new version of that story with Alexa.
Why not just cut the brakes on the vans? I mean, it's so much easier. I guess you lose packages that way. So yeah, it's not a good situation, but you always have to say it. I just got an Amazon delivery. I'm sorry.
What'd you order?
It's a filter. It's not an exciting Amazon delivery, but I needed it.
I gotta get Mom's cat a water fountain because it doesn't want to drink water, and it really needs to drink more water because it throws up a lot.
Does that cause you to throw up a lot?
It's I think so because I don't know.
My vet told me, it's cat talk. My vet told me if some cats are like low drinkers, And you just have to feed them wet food to try and get the fluid in them.
The
that
water
way.
content up.
It seems like when the cat does drink more, it seems like it's happier and healthier. And when it's
Also, remember we did a story about the, maybe we didn't do a story, but I read about it somewhere where old people with dementia get the same way. So they make these candies, and they look like candies, and they're just a tiny bit sweet, but they're just filled with water. And they just give them a big box of them every day, and they sit and eat their water.
I need to order some of those because we're having a problem with Mom's blood sugar and Reese's Pieces.
Give her and the cat both water candies. And speaking of dementia, I didn't even plan that. The election's ramping up, and one thing we talk about a lot here is voter databases. You have no idea how much information is about you in that voter database, and they treat them like baseball cards.
They really do.
On Capitol Hill. It's one of the ways that you talk about going across the aisle. One of the things that flies across the aisle is voter registration databases, because it's like, hey, we're playing a game, but we can only help each other by getting more people out to the polls. They really do want you to vote. Well, Joe Biden came up with an app, and his app was kind of it's a really insidious thing. You put in your contact list, and it would go and find people who maybe didn't vote last year, because they know that. And it'd be like, hey, maybe you should give them a call. Which, if any of my family did this, I'd never speak to them again. But there was a bigger issue.
A bug in Joe Biden's campaign app gave anyone access to millions of voter files. Now, TechCrunch has used Joe Biden's campaign app. It really wasn't Joe Biden's campaign app. It was like the third party twice removed of some think tank that was actually funding this. And this app was just built with baling wire and duct tape. It was a very thinly veiled JSON interface to the voter file. And so when you would debug, you could just, set up a proxy between your phone and something else, and you could actually see all of the voter data in the raw file in the response, even though it wasn't displayed in the application. So if you wanted to get somebody's, 10-year voter history, you could add their name to your contact list in your phone and then look at the result from the application, from the API, and have all of that history, even though it wasn't displayed in the application.
Ouch. I imagine you could probably scrape that too.
Yeah.
You could just figure out what the API call was passing.
Yeah, technically that would be classified as a data breach, and they would have to notify all the people that were in the breach.
Oh, I'm sure they did. Yeah, no problem. Let's get in the time machine and go back to 2018. And one of the hottest stories in 2018 was the first ever death by robot car. It made big waves. I don't know if you remember it. I certainly do.
I do.
And there was an extra wrinkle to that story in that there was a human being in the car. Now, they were not driving the car.
But they were supposed to...
Safety.
Yeah.
They were the last line of defense between the car and the corpse.
And they were literally in the driver's seat of the car.
Yes. But they were not, they weren't looking at the road, unfortunately, it seems. They were watching The Voice. Is that still in the air?
I don't think so.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Maybe it is.
It's trash TV. It's definitely still in the air.
The Voice killed a woman. Anyway, it's taken years, and this is another one of the situations where this person was probably like, oh, I got away with that. But wait.
Safety driver in Safety driver in fatal Arizona Uber self-driving car crash charged with homicide. Finally, it took 2 years. The trial set for February of 2021. This was in Vegas.
They've also revealed that the emergency braking system was removed because it was overactive, and some other safeguards were removed, and they were like, you know what? If we're going to remove all these, we need to put a person in this car. But that didn't work. You have to be careful about what you put on social media. Obviously, no rioting, no unionizing, no crime, and add this one to the list.
Tony Abbott hacked after posting boarding pass on Instagram. He was going on holiday or something, and he posted something to Instagram, and a security researcher thought to himself, well, actually his friend prompted him, was like, hey, I wonder if I could do anything with this. And it turns out, yes, in fact he could. He was able to log into the airline website, and then the airline website, much like the voter file thing, you could see a lot more under the hood than what was actually displayed on the webpage. The would-be hacker was able to eventually get his phone number, and then he wrote this really just overly long and elaborate blog post about getting a hold of him without calling him, even though he had his phone number, because that would be weird. And just letting him know. And so the blog post ends in him having a conversation, the guy that found the info having a conversation with Tony Abbott, who ultimately did have to get a new passport number because, who else has that information?
Could have been a lot funnier if he'd done some other stuff, but he'd probably be in jail. What did it take, like a year?
It took like a year to get approval.
Yeah, to get to the man. He had to go through this crazy chain of, I think he didn't even, like, he got his personal assistant or something.
Yeah.
Before, and they were like, oh, this is real.
Yeah. It's like, here's the last digit of the phone number. Ah.
Meanwhile, remember, again, we talked about this last week. Before all of the darkness, the dark cloud settled over 2020, the big argument was 5G. And now 5G is kind of here, but it sucks. And it has low coverage because they've given up on it. But it seems that the fight about 5G still exists.
Macron slams anti-5G proponents as Amish, causing uproar in France. This might be the first time that I've actually agreed with the French president Macron. I don't know. I'm sure I'm not saying his name correctly. I'm sorry.
It's Macron.
I don't know. But he's literally like, 5G, like, it doesn't cause any of the bad things that you people say it does. We're going to roll it out in rural areas because it's going to help us. And one of the people commented was like, I don't think it's fair that he's shutting down the debates on this. And I was thinking, I don't think it's fair that he's shutting down the debates on things like indoor plumbing. Who needs running water and a flushable toilet inside? I think we should all have to go outside to poop in holes because that's more ecologically friendly.
I think...
It's not, though.
As someone who poops in holes, right, Krista?
As someone who has indeed dug a hole and pooped in it, you have to pack that. You don't pack the shit out. You do pack the TP out.
But I think a lot of the people were outraged more about the use of Amish as a pejorative.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. Which, it's an accurate description.
Yeah,
you know what?
Are Amish people upset about that? I wouldn't think they would be.
I bet they're anti-5G. I'd bet a large sum, considering the whole electricity thing.
He talked about oil lamps. I mean, I get that. Is like, life is really, seems like it's harder than it should be. Like, we as a species would have failed before now if life before now was harder than this. But it's like, I think life before now was harder than this by a lot. And a lot of people did not make it.
Was that the worst thing that I was driving here today and I was thinking, man, what if like 50% of these people weren't here? So much smoother.
You never include yourself in the 50% that disappears, though.
Hey, I'll take the chance. Flip a coin. Yeah. This story is interesting, not so much because of what the story is about, but because of the DART program, which somehow I missed in all of my news collecting. Apparently, this was announced in August, and it's crazy, and I can't wait for it. But we do have to wait for it till 2021, and this program even longer.
European Space Agency awards a $153 million contract for its first planetary defense mission. I think TechCrunch, we criticized TechCrunch for having the clickbaity headlines. They missed a great one here. They really did. It would have been something like $153 million to protect planet Earth with the planetary defense mission, or like killer asteroid. The only thing that stands in the way between a killer asteroid is the European Space Agency and its $153 million protection contract.
But they're not really going to protect us. See, what's going to happen is the DART program, which is even cooler, that's NASA, because USA is number one. And DART stands for Dual Asteroid something redirection. So what we're going to do, double asteroid redirect test. So there's these two asteroids. And we're going to just shoot some rockets at them and be like, let's see if we can move these suckers around. Just in case one is ever coming at us, we got to Armageddon it. But instead of blowing it up, we're trying to redirect it.
Yeah, because if we blow it up, the same, as we learned from Star Trek, all of that mass is still on a trajectory toward Earth, and it's still going to enter the atmosphere. All we're doing is increasing the surface area. Maybe that'll help it burn up. Maybe not if it's a dense asteroid.
Now, what the Euros are going to do is they're going to launch this a bunch of smaller satellites to investigate and see how the DART did. But it's going to take 2 years for that to happen. So I'm on the edge of my seat, but how long can I stay there? Realistically. Also, what if they mess it up and they just point them straight at Earth?
Whoops.
The filter. That's the filter.
The great filter lies ahead of us.
Net neutrality is hotly debated still, even though we don't have it, but Europe does have it, at least a version of it. And there's been some argument about the whole hey, can AT&T give you free HBO? Is that net neutrality? And I think it's kind of against the spirit that net neutrality was designed for. It's kind of one of the exact things. And the courts seem to agree.
Europe's top court says net neutrality rules bar 0 rating, and that's what we mean when we say 0 rating. So it said that effectively, if Netflix and HBO and all these other people can pay your ISP, then that means the competing services will have a harder time. I mean, I never understood that argument. There are some people, even in our comments, that are like, Netflix uses a lot of bandwidth, they should pay for that. And it's like, you're paying for that as a customer. What are you buying as a customer? Like, do you not understand that? Like, that's how data works. But okay. So Europe agreed. Somebody with a clue in Europe was like...
But it took a lot of appeals and went all the way up.
Yeah. Because, what a mess. What a terrible mess. But this is good. This is actually good that somebody with a clue has looked at this in Europe and said, hey, wait a minute.
We also talked about several different secure phone companies. I don't remember the name of the one. Was it Canadian? They did a lot of Mexican drug cartel business.
Oh, and yeah, we talked about this, yeah.
They actually, they got the name in here somewhere, but I've forgotten it.
EncroChat.
No, that's this one. The other one was in North America. EncroChat was the European one. Anyway, so the idea is you get a phone, like they take an existing phone, they strip out all the stuff that could identify you. The GPS, the camera, all the nonsense. And then they run dual operating systems, and they encrypt all of the traffic going in and out of those things. And the guy that was doing it here, I can't remember if he was in Canada. I think he was in Canada. He got busted because they said that he was aiding and abetting.
Yeah.
Because he was like marketing directly to the cartels, and he was doing some other stuff.
They picked him up at a bar because he was just bragging at a bar. Like, oh, yeah, you want one of these? It's like, you could totally child traffic all you want. And they're like, oh, that's interesting.
But the Euros took a different approach because they actually managed to crack the network. And now we find out the scope of what they did.
European police malware could harvest GPS messages, passwords, and more. So they cracked the network and then installed malware on literally every phone on the network. And apparently nobody noticed, or this was in the last days. So they hoovered up a huge amount of information. The much more interesting thing in this data set is that corrupt cops were feeding the criminals information. They also said that there is a huge amount of evidence to support there were legit users on this network. There were people that were privacy oriented and privacy focused that weren't doing anything illegal that had bought these phones.
And they got the malware too. Everybody got it.
Yeah.
That's kind of the darkness of the current situation is by seeking privacy, you stand out more.
Yeah.
That should not be the case. Shouldn't be able to zero rate privacy.
Now, they did get some, the other end of the spectrum was in there, too. There were a couple of assassins they caught who had, lined up some kills on the old EncroChat. So, probably for the best that they're not circulating anymore. It's a dark situation. And speaking of tracking and tracking everybody indiscriminately, you know who else does that and isn't going to jail for it? Google.
Google faces a $3 billion lawsuit over the use of children's data. This is in Bloomberg. I didn't get a chance to read the Bloomberg version of this article, but basically this is just more of the same. Things like YouTube and YouTube Kids, and there are some specific products that Google has that are marketed toward children, but it doesn't seem like it's possible for Google to do what it's doing to just even stand up the product and be compliant with European law. And so this lawsuit basically says, hey, you've had time to become compliant. There's no way that you are. We're going to, do a lawsuit and do discovery and figure out exactly how you're deficient. But for me, the lawsuit and some of the stuff they claimed open up a whole lot of doors. Like the Windows, the operating system collects a lot of telemetry as well. It's like if you have kids using Chromebooks, which is part of what this is, and you have kids using Windows, you're gonna have Windows doesn't even ask you how old you are, and it's collecting data immediately. So it seems like Microsoft's gonna have a huge liability here as well, maybe more than Google.
There's only one solution here, and I've been saying it all along. We have to keep children off the internet and out of public immediately. We did a story last week about Belarus. They're having a little bit of an issue after their election. Some people think that there was maybe a little foul play involved. In fact, they're quite sure of it. And when I say some people, I mean like
Basically everybody.
most of the population.
Yeah, literally everyone.
So they took the streets, and the president said, you know what, these this filthy swine, they're using the social media against me. Turn it off. And they used a special tool, which now we learn more about this story unfolding.
Francisco backed Sandvine and Nixes their Belarus deal, citing abuse. So this is just like the statement from Amazon. It's like, we had no ideas our tools would be used this way. It's like we sold them the Saw-O-Matic 5000, and they've been feeding journalists to the Saw-O-Matic 5000. We had no idea. We thought it was only super criminals.
Last week, the statement was, it's like, listen, we don't make decisions about what's right and what's wrong. We just sell this product, and it's up to them how they use it. Clearly, a lot of backlash.
Clearly, a lot of their workforce was like, we're out.
Probably some threats. And so this week, they're like, oh. Now, they did sort of cover their asses a little bit by saying that we haven't changed our mind about the whole policy thing, but we have detected that they have used our software in a way that is against the terms of agreement. So we're going to terminate the contract.
That reeks of more BS than the thing they were saying last week.
Yeah, well, obviously.
I am HO.
But at least the Belarusians might get a little internet back. We'll see. And China is still mad.
This week's TikTok update is brought to you by Lysol.
Still mad. Well, actually, we have the big TikTok update will be in the business section.
Oh, okay.
Because it's the big curveball. Microsoft's out. But, China, still not happy about it.
China says TikTok coercive possession shows U.S. bullying. It's like, this is against Western ideals. What are you doing? I don't understand.
These Western ideals that we seek to destroy with every decision. This is a country that will not let most Western software across the border, even digitally. So, they're upset about it. It is probably true what they're saying. It's just that they do it too.
Yeah.
So they're not wrong.
It's not necessarily even that TikTok is, a tool of their spy agency in the same way that, maybe Pokemon Go is a tool of our spy agency, or at least the data set. I mean, I think Pokemon Go is has the potential to be far more insidious than TikTok. That could be a good video all on its own. Like, how could you weaponize TikTok versus how could you weaponize Pokemon Go? Like, imagine Pokemon Go is like, you've got an operation going on between two spies, and your spy needs some subterfuge. What if you just put, like, the really rare Pokemon in that area, so, like, there's a huge crowd of people that are all, like, super concerned with their phones? It would be the perfect smokescreen for your agent doing an operation in that area.
Or just collecting everybody's location data.
It might have been in 2018. When was it hot?
That was like 2018.
I wonder what their numbers are like during the pandemic.
It has the potential to be much better because people would just be out, isolating on their phones.
Yeah, any reason to be outside. Yeah.
So moving on to social media, this is perhaps one of the reasons that Google is facing those mammoth fines in the UK. That fine, by the way, who is the settlement going to go to? It's all the children of Great Britain. If they win, they expect it to hash out to between $100 and $400 per child.
Wow,
that's not too bad. Although, if it's $3 billion, was it $30 billion or $3 billion?
$3 billion.
Does that math work out? How much are the lawyers taking?
Probably
70%.
None at all. They're just going to give it all to the kids. They would never take that money from children.
But one of the things that it can do to your poor child is take them down rabbit holes of what people call radicalization.
YouTube's recommendation system is criticized as harmful. Mozilla wants to research it. Maker Firefox is soliciting help from YouTube users in an attempt to find problematic patterns. It's like, hey kid, do you like the Berenstain Bears? The Berenstain Bears would like you to believe in Mother Russia or Stalin.
Al-Qaeda.
I'm more frustrated with YouTube's recommendation system recommending me the same stuff over and over. I'm like, I've watched this.
They're bad about that. But they do often find things that I'm interested in that I would never think I'm interested in. Like the guy who cleans out like the waterways and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, what?
It's like, why is this satisfying?
How did you know?
Problematic patterns of water removal.
So I guess you install an extension, and if you find yourself spiraling down into a rabbit hole, you click something, it's like, oh, Mozilla, they got me. And then Mozilla will go and sort of try to figure out what they're doing.
You wake up 3 hours later and it's just What? Where am I? What's going on?
You've watched 6 hours of sourdough videos.
Everybody's
Have you made
making
bread yet?
No.
everybody's making fun of that now. Like all the late night and stand up guys are like, check it out, I've got my sourdough starter, and they all hold it up. And it's just like, oh, I guess that's passe now.
Oh yeah, that was early pandemic.
That was really pandemic, yeah.
It's all about
Now it's all
organic
about
gardening.
gardening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although it's harvest season. What's the fall item going to be?
I need to plant. I was gonna try to plant garlic and onion, but I haven't done that yet, and I need to because it's getting cool now.
You know what? I just realized what the fall one's going to be. It's going to be Molotov cocktails.
We're going into flu season, and a Molotov cocktail is, no better way to ward off the flu than the warmth of glowing embers of literally everything around
Gas
you.
fumes. Really clean out your lungs.
Did you see? This is some other 2020 doomsday news, but did you see we're actually we've reached the end of the list of hurricanes, and now we're having to go into Greek letters.
Oh, nice.
We can't name anymore. We don't have any more names, so they're like, well, this next one is just going to be Alpha, I guess.
If we make it to Hurricane Omega, that's it. It's all over.
Let's end. I hope that doesn't happen.
I kind of hope it does. So, yeah, and speaking of, misinformation on social media is one of the hottest topics right now. It seems like people just can't not consume it and get divided by it. We are a divided country, to be sure. Now, here in the U.S., probably one of the biggest critiques that you can make of our country is the two-party system. But perhaps when you have many smaller systems, it's even more dangerous, as we can see in Ethiopia.
Hate speech on Facebook is pushing Ethiopia dangerously close to a genocide. Ethnic violence set off by the assassination of a popular singer has been supercharged by hate speech and the indictments shared widely on the platform. So I kind of thought this was clickbait, like just Vice clickbait nonsense. But this is kind of, you should read this. There's a lot of nuance here because, cultural differences and things like that. I would wager that not a lot of people in Ethiopia are watching the Level 1 news. But in a lot of ways, there's a lot of parallels to the things that Facebook has been accused of here as well, because a lot of people get sucked into something and it's like, you're right, because A, then B. And it's like correlation is not causation. That's not actually a thing. And it is actually leading people to take up arms against their fellow man in Ethiopia. But here, you can whip people into a frenzy over really dumb stuff too.
Our people are taking up arms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know those people who were shot in the street last month? So
You know how you can find ammo anywhere?
Yesterday, the day before.
Not that different. It's just that they are maybe they weren't quite eased into it. They're not the boiled frog.
Yeah.
The water was at a rolling boil before they were thrown into it in terms of social media, and so they elected a leader. What was the name of the Oromo? Is that the name of the ethnic minority? Yeah, the Oromo. And that's it's a really small group, but now they're the leader. And they're like, yeah, it's our time to shine. But he was like, you know what? I'm going to accept all peoples in my presidency. And they're like, well, how dare you? And so then this other singer was also a Oromo, and he gets killed. And that just kind of lit the keg. I'm sure there's a lot more nuance to it than even Vice was able to suss out. But the point is, lynchings and beheadings have started to happen. I don't know if we can blame...
Which only leads to more lynchings and beheadings.
I don't know if we can blame social media entirely for that. I think that's just the inherent evil of humanity. But it does help. It lubricates the evil of humanity. Social media is an evil lubricant. You can quote me on that. And speaking of social media doing terrible things, we have another person who has defected from Facebook and is telling a lot of terrible, terrible stories.
I'm going to read the headline out of order because I think it is better in the wrong order. But it's the dude says, I have blood on my hands. A whistleblower says Facebook ignored global political manipulation. I've found multiple blatant attempts by foreign national governments to abuse our platform on vast scales to mislead their own citizenry and cause international news on multiple occasions. I have personally made decisions that affected national presidents without oversight and taken action to enforce against so many prominent politicians globally that I've lost count.
And that's maybe one of the worst things about social media is we talk about misinformation, yeah, but I think worse than misinformation being available is some random person deciding whether it's true or not. And obviously getting it wrong sometimes, and that having huge consequences. Now, people, sometimes when you let people make their own decisions, they will behead somebody. I don't know how we fix that, but people must be given the opportunity to behead.
They need to regret the beheading. If they regret the beheading, they've grown as a person.
And we can cycle them right back into society. So Facebook has some internal problems. This is not really an isolated story. A lot of the people who work at Facebook are suddenly like, oh, wow, we might be the Death Star. And I'm a big part of it. And I don't feel comfortable all of a sudden. And Facebook's got all these internal communication tools, and it seems like a lot of this sort of rhetoric is popping up. So what do you do if you're Zuckerberg?
Facebook issues new rules on internal employee communications. We should read some of them because they're sort of like kind of dark. They had a couple.
Are they quoted in here?
There's like the bullet list at the top, maybe. Yeah. All employees feel supported at work, especially the company's black community. They will also be more specific about which parts of workplace can be used to discuss social and political issues. So somewhere in there, I think it was talking about how, like that data scientist we were just talking about 2 stories ago, there's a lot of that kind of discussion happening internally that Facebook is monitoring, and it's unsettling for them. It's like, no, we just need to talk about happy things at work. We don't need to be, talking about how, oh, we accidentally caught this thing, and oh, we escalated it, and oh, nothing happened. We shouldn't do that.
This change would be so that employees do not have to confront social issues during their day-to-day work.
Well, I think a lot of it is also because, there's this whole trend now where it's like people just stop you in the street and they're like, say Black Lives Matter, say it. And if you don't, violence occurs. So I can totally see that. Like, if you post a message like this if you think Black Lives Matter. And then they figure out who didn't like it. And there's a big ordeal. And so saying, please, we're here to manipulate people, not talk about politics.
Womp womp.
The advertising engine does not benefit from this. Stop. But I definitely agree. I don't want to hear that if I'm at work. It's like, okay, I have to be here. I don't want to participate in your little cosplays. You're LARPing, keep that in the streets, not here at work. Twitter has a brand new user this week, and a controversial one, but now she's gone.
This is from Newsweek. I was kind of surprised. Twitter suspends account of Chinese virologist who claimed that the thing was made in a lab. And so she was also on like Tucker Carlson's thing on Fox News. And it's kind of odd that a lot of platforms have silenced this person, but the stuff that has been presented so far doesn't seem to be credible scientifically. So
I tried to read the paper. I couldn't.
I don't think I probably made it about as far as you did, and there's nothing really actionable in it.
It seemed like a lot of the stuff from what I was able to make out, and there's some like biological word soup in there that I'm going to go ahead and admit, I'm not on that level when it comes to vaccine biology and virology, but it seemed like, hey, based on these factors, this could totally be man-made. But she promised a smoking gun.
Yeah, that hasn't materialized.
And maybe it does, and we don't understand it. And I am totally open to the idea that she is being silenced because it doesn't fit the narrative. The biggest thing that worries me here is that when it comes to the media, Trump is never allowed to be right. And Trump made this same statement very early on, based on nothing, of course.
Did you see in this article that it says her and her colleagues are also affiliated with the Rule of Law Society, a group founded by Steve Bannon? Like, isn't that kind of maybe a red flag?
That is a red flag.
Yeah, sure. There's a lot of
red flags.
Differently colored flags going on here.
But I love how, if you're just, it's like, you wake up one morning and it's like, da, 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 I'm an ordinary citizen of the United States of America. I want to have my say in how things run by voting. You have to have a PhD in being a citizen in order to actually intelligently make sense of things, because this is insane. Like this should be a very easy to figure out thing, and not, it's on the level of like indoor plumbing.
But science is politicized at this point.
So indoor plumbing.
It always has been. It always has been.
But you can't, because you're going to have equal credentials on both sides of the argument screaming at you that the other side is evil and they don't know what they're talking about.
Who would want to poop in their house? You need to go poop in the street. That's crazy.
And all of these people too, like, they're all just chasing money. Like, money makes it terrible in science as well, because you're constantly needing funding for your lab. So it's like, well, if this person will pay me to give them this result, that's what I'll do.
And she might be chasing citizenship.
Yeah. Or asylum or something.
She can never go back to China. I feel bad for her family. And their kidneys. And but that was not Twitter's greatest loss this week. Far beyond that was what was the hashtag?
I don't think Kanye's malicious. I just think Kanye's Kanye.
I think he's a little bit maybe mentally ill.
Free Ye. No, he has a documented. He's bipolar.
Yeah, like I think he needs to learn some like coping mechanisms.
I don't think that's gonna happen.
Kanye was kicked off of Twitter for 12 hours for violating its rules. Also in Newsweek.
He posted a phone number. You're not supposed to do that.
He also posted, so I happened to be looking at the trending tab when all this started happening, and I saw some of the tweets. I didn't see the phone number one, but he was also posting details about contracts that he had with like record labels.
Right. He wants to, it was a record producer, I think, that he posted. So he wants to buy his masters back from Sony and whoever else owns them. And they're not willing to give them up because they're like, hey, we make a lot of money with these. And so I think this is his way of like tantruming and trying to force their hand.
Yeah, that sounds pretty bipolar.
There were like, when I looked at it, there were like 6 or 7 tweets all in a row, really long, like kind of rambly. And then I guess he posted the phone number later, but.
And encouraged people to call the man and negotiate on his behalf, which is a no-no.
That is a no-no.
That guy's gonna have to change his phone number.
You think?
Like, there's no way that didn't get screenshotted and shared all over the internet.
Yeah, you can't put that back in the bottle. 12 hours seems maybe just like a little bit of a slap on the wrist there.
Yeah.
You know what? I think Kanye will sin again on Twitter.
Yeezy, please.
All right.
Well, Chris, you got any garden updates for us this week?
My garden's probably gonna die this weekend. It's supposed to be in the 40s overnight.
It is. That's a really, really autumny day out there. It's kind of nice.
It is. We have tomatoes and peppers still growing. I think they'll probably be done after this weekend. And then I went on and moved all our herbs inside. So we'll have them for the winter.
Nice.
But other than that, we're done.
And we're done.
Congrats.
We'll see you in the next one.
What
do we got? Business and security?
No, it's got to be the smallest one. Probably robots.
Business and
A
robots.
sprinkling of robots.
And then security, a lot of security, and nonsense on Friday.
Nonsense. All right. Bye.